Hello everyone. Fortuna entered the house, followed by her boyfriend and a younger girl around 15. Lucky Lady wore a golden dress even more scandalously lavish than usual, whereas the teenage girl dressed so tastelessly that Ryan couldn't look at her without fighting the urge to drag her to a tailor's shop. Fortuna's date was around Ryan's physical age, with short well-groomed brown hair, blue eyes, and an elegant all-black formal suit. He looked rather plain when compared to his girlfriend, but the courier felt an intense vibe coming from him. In fact, he seemed vaguely familiar. The mystery boy immediately singled out the courier, who waved a hand at him. "Hi, I'm Ryan. I would say I'm immortal, but you probably know that already." "Matthias," the man replied, shaking Ryan's hand with a small smile. "Matthias Martel." The way he moved, his aura, the slight inflection in the voice. "I know, we've met," Ryan replied cheerfully, testing the waters. "You did?" Fortuna asked while Matthias' smile strained a bit. Since he hadn't cut that lucky woman's hair this time around, she seemed a lot more well-disposed towards Ryan. "Matt, why didn't you tell me?"
"Yeah."
"You're usually a very transparent kind of guy, Matt." Ryan winked at him. "I hope you don't hide anything else." Matt's poker face remained ironclad while he answered his date's question. It didn't seem important at the time. "Fortuna, you brought your sister?" Ki-young asked the blonde bombshell, although her eyes remained focused on the teenage girl. "Isn't she too young for this kind of party?" "I'm almost 15. The younger girl pouted. While she was no top model like her sister, she would probably grow into an attractive woman in time. She had short, light brown hair, ocean blue eyes, and a heart-shaped face. 14 and a half, Fortuna teased her, her younger sister pinching her in the arm. "Hi, I'm Narcinia Varin." The teen smiled brightly at everyone. "Alias series. I still can't believe Augustus gave you an Olympian name before me," Fortuna complained, her boyfriend glancing away. "If only Felix hadn't gone crazy, we could have become Diana and Apollo." "Has he answered your messages?" Ki-young asked, a look of concern on her face. "I wish." Fortuna complained, crossing her arms angrily. "I swear when he comes back." "If he comes back," Narcinia replied with a depressed face. "Maybe he got hit by a car," Ryan said, the others glaring at him. "Well, he is a cat." "Or was that too soon?" "He will come back," Fortuna insisted, though she looked at Jamie and Ki-young. "Can't you help? Give him a call?" The couple exchanged an embarrassed glance, one heavy with regrets. "He didn't leave the house on the best terms," Jamie said stoically. Felix needs time to figure himself out." "But..." Matthias put a hand on his girlfriend's arm before she could insist. He seemed more insightful than her, though that wasn't hard. Having talked with Adam Cat on the Dynamis path, Ryan quickly put two and two together. He had a pretty good idea of what caused his feline friend to leave the Augusti, namely, Ki-young's situation. Something else also bothered Ryan. Felix the cat said his sister Narcinia was adopted, and she matched a certain description. Could it be? This party already promised a lot of surprises. "Luigi isn't here?" Fortuna asked as she scanned the room. "He's usually early when there are girls." "No, the hockey killer attacked him again when his bodyguard took a bathroom break," Jamie replied with a frown. "The attacker also forced Luigi to eat a salami." "Hockey killer?" Ryan asked at the same time. A shocked Fortuna said, "A salami?" "That's probably the same maniac who attacked Luigi before," Jamie replied with a sigh. "And yes, a salami. Don't ask me why. They say the city is safer with the meta gone, but if you ask me, it has enough madmen already." It could be a vigilante, Ryan said. Some handsome fellow possessing a strange sense of justice, fighting crime with a hockey stick in one hand and a sausage in the other. Why has he only attacked Luigi then? Lanka pointed out from the sofa, too lazy to leave her spot.
Nah.
Blabbermouth, it's just petty revenge. If you ask me, the jackass deserved it, always asking the wrong questions. Whatever the case, this hockey killer will get what he deserves, Jamie said firmly, glancing at Fortuna. Now that the Meta Gang has left New Rome, will you look into it? Vulcan hasn't released us yet, Fortuna complained. Though we cleaned up Rust Town and Sparrow chased those psychos off to the ends of the earth. Well, Ryan wouldn't say they had cleaned up Rust Town. They had prevented a large fire, but the junkyard had transformed into a pile of molten trash conveniently hiding the bunker's entrance. Vulcan had tasked the group to patrol the area in case the Meta returned, while she left with Sparrow to hunt them down. Ryan hadn't received any news since, though he heard both women would attend the party. Truthfully, the time traveler hadn't yet figured out what to do about Mekran's bunker, and Len hadn't contacted him again either. He hoped the party would help him de-stress and clear his mind. Should we discuss this while Ki-young cleared her throat while looking at Matthias? I'm sorry, but... Don't worry, he has seen right through us, Ryan said with a smirk, delighting at making Martel more and more uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I'm sure one of you is the hockey killer, the man replied with the same mirthful face. I hope I didn't blow your cover. Everyone took it as a joke and laughed, none louder than Ryan himself. Touché. It's okay, Chitter, I vouch for my Matthias, Fortuna said, putting her head on her man's shoulder. He's the one. I only agreed to a second date, Matthias replied with a stoic expression. It's going to happen whether you like it or not. How did the two of you meet? Ki-young asked. You know that time when my third apartment had a gas leak last week? Fortuna asked. I narrowly avoided death by falling off the window, and Matthias rescued me. No, your power rescued you, Matthias corrected her with a deadpan face. I didn't expect you to fall on me from the third floor. That was completely unexpected. It was love at first sight, Fortuna declared. It wasn't, her boyfriend protested. I checked if you were all right, and when I tried to leave because I had other stuff planned, you started shouting at me. Well, of course I was furious, Fortuna protested, while the others chuckled. The world's most beautiful woman falls on your lap and asks you to spoil her because she's distressed, and you dare refuse? Yes, Matthias replied bluntly. Clearly, he was immune to Fortuna's charm and she couldn't stand it. What, my world should have stopped for you? Yes, it should have. And she said it without any hint of sarcasm whatsoever. When I look at boys, they drop at my feet, but you, Matt? You walked away. When does the music start? Narcinia finally spoke up. She seemed a bit shy in the presence of so many older people, but grew more confident as the group exchanged pleasantries. It's too silent. Jamie glanced at Ryan, who showed them the DJ, a brain in a jar hooked to the TV and loudspeakers, surrounded by Ki-young's rats. You use a genius-made cyberbrain as a DJ? Narcinia asked, though unlike the others she seemed more excited than bothered. So cool. I shouldn't have asked you to take care of the playlist, Ki-young told Ryan with a regretful sigh. Remorse is for those who don't know what they want. Ryan replied, activating DJ Brain. Now watch. The brain started playing music, and as it did, a light shone from inside its tank. As the liquid protecting the gray matter changed color, creating a nightclub ambience with the appropriate music. Catchy, Lanka admitted, nodding to herself to the tune of the music. I don't recognize the artist, Ki-young said, while her rats started breakdancing around the TV. It's a Grand Theft Auto remix, Matthias said, much to Ryan's surprise. A pretty good one too. Matthias is a game designer, Fortuna said, since he was clearly too modest to boast for himself. He's super talented. To be precise, I'm a programmer and I make indie games on the side, her date replied with a sheepish grin, the most emotion Ryan had seen him emote so far. Mostly RPGs and Metroidvanias. Nobody understood the jargon, except Ryan, who had stars in his eyes. However, he decided to test that man's knowledge first, before getting his hopes up. Have you played Metroid Fusion? Yes, but I prefer Super Metroid, Matthias replied. More open-ended. Best Square RPG? Final Fantasy VII, but 6 holds a special place in my heart. There's another gamer alive on this godforsaken planet. Ryan was almost brought to tears at finding a soulmate. I can die happy now. Do you have powers, nerd too? Lanka asked Matthias, raising her head above the sofa with a beer can in hand. Name's Lanka, by the way. The programmer nodded. One of the bedrooms, yours I presume, is painted brown, with 30 beer cans in a corner and a motorcycle magazine. Oh great, a blue, Lanka shrugged before he could finish. If you tell anyone what's below the bed, I'm killing you. Matthias can see anything within a short radius, Fortuna replied with pride, putting an arm around his. He seemed much more uncomfortable about open displays of affection than his girlfriend. Ryan got the feeling she had more or less dragged him to the party. PFF, that's nothing. Narcinia grabbed a knife from the kitchen and then raised it at her thumb. Look. She cut her thumb before anyone could react, a drop of blood falling on the parquet. The liquid quickly expanded into a bubble while taking a green coloration, before changing shape. The strange mixture grew horns, legs, fur. 5 seconds later, the group looked at a cute white goat. It's adorable, Kyung said in amazement, while Jamie smiled warmly. I can create life from my blood, Narcinia boasted, her new pet letting out a cry. Nothing too complicated or too big, but I can make any kind of animal, plant, even chimeras. You can make any kind of goat? Ryan asked, now extremely interested. Of course. Why? The courier looked at this pure-hearted girl deep in her big eyes, and then whispered 2 words that would corrupt her forever. Goat fights. Narcinia looked at Ryan as if he were a genius, which he was, and then made a second goat. A black-furred-born fighter, with golden eyes. Which one do you take, Ryan? She asked, as the 2 goats glared at each other. The black one. He could already see the untapped market. Narcinia ended up making 8 goats, as new guests decided to participate. She granted each of them a different color and held a tournament while the house slowly filled up with people. A few had formed a circle around the sofa, to watch the final battle. Go, Ma Biquette! Ryan cheered up his champion half in French, half in English. She locked horns with her rival, ready to claim her rightful place as the competition's winner. You can do it, Shub-Niggurath. You gave it a name, Blabbermouth? Lanka asked, having bet on a golden goat, and grown strangely invested in the fight. Kick her ass. Unfortunately, her animal couldn't stand long against Shub-Niggurath's implacable ferocity. The black goat managed to toss her rival to the side, who joined the other defeated contestants in shameful exile. Yes, yes. Ryan instantly petted his black goat, who raised her head with smug confidence. The spectators applauded, though none as loudly as Narcinia. You did it. You did it. I'm sure you cheated by stopping time, Lanka grumbled while finishing her currant smoke. With the spectacle finished, most guests dispersed to talk in a corner or grab a drink. Would you say that if she were white? Ryan accused her, stroking Shub-Niggurath's ear. Actually, he did cheat once, but only against Fortuna. Considering her insane luck, he had to level the playing field somehow. Anyway, Lucky Girl proved to be a sore loser and left the competition with her beau. The couple had moved to the kitchen bar, with Fortuna spending her time advertising her boyfriend to everyone who would listen. Jamie, ever the people's person, engaged Matthias in a friendly conversation while mixing cocktails, though the programmer remained guarded. Ki-young welcomed every new guest as they arrived, growing more anxious by the second. All of the guests were genomes, and most of them advertised. A telekinetic whom Ryan recognized as one of Renesco's customers helped Jamie with the bar by moving drinks around, while a fire manipulator showed off to a girl by creating burning shapes out of thin air. Knowing genomes, Ryan would be disappointed if the party didn't end up with 1 or 2 explosions. "Are you accusing me of goat racism?" Lanka brought him back to the conversation. "What do we do with the goats now though?" Narcinia asked. Her creations had started playing with Ki-young's rats, the rodents climbing on top of the larger goats. Most of the guests looked at them with amusement, and some with hunger. "You make a wolf, to eat them," Ryan suggested, his goat champion looking up at him. "Only the losers," Shub-Niggurath. "Only the losers. And how do we get rid of the wolf afterward?" Lanka asked the hard question, expecting to corner him. Ryan stated the simple solution. "You make a bear, to eat the wolf." "I can't make a bear," Narcinia replied with a giggle, sitting on the sofa with Lanka. "Too fat." "Then we call the panda." "Who will win between him and a wolf?" "The wolf, it's not even a contest," Lanka said, before offering a beer can to Narcinia. "Want some, over goat?" "Mom and Dad said I could go if I didn't drink," Narcinia replied while joining her fingers. "And Father Torque told me alcohol is poison for the soul." "Do you see your parents or a priest around here?" "Trust me, it would take 10 times more before it poisons anything." Lanka shoved the can in a surprised Narcinia's hands, who looked at it with clear hesitation. "Do you see any pretty boys around, Blabbermouth?" "I'm hungry." "That depends, do I include myself?" Ryan joked. "Because everyone else will feel like a huge disappointment in comparison." "You aren't my type, Blabbermouth. I prefer the strong silent type, and you talk too fucking much." Lanka glanced at the entrance. "Though the cavalry is coming to rescue you." Greta and Sparrow had arrived through the front gate, the first dressing casually, the latter wearing a red gown. A third woman accompanied them, a drop-dead gorgeous redhead in a stunning green dress. She kept her hair in a bun and tried to look dignified, but Ryan noticed an undercurrent of playful, fox-like cruelty in her emerald gaze. Clearly one of the Killer 7. It took Ryan a second to realize that all 3 of the assassins escorted a young woman in her early 20s, a stunning, queen-like lady with long platinum hair, almost silver. Unlike her companions, she dressed very conservatively and all in black, highlighting her pale skin. That stoic woman scanned the room, an apathetic look in her blue eyes. Her expression was one of pure, absolute boredom. Quicksave was halfway tempted to approach her, but when he got a good look at her emotionless face, he backed off. She looked a bit too much like a younger Pluto for his comfort. Greta noticed him though and gave him her usual fake smile, while the pale lady muttered a few words to Sparrow and the redhead. She didn't seem interested in social interaction, moving towards the bar to drink in a corner. "Vamp," Lanka said, indicating the redhead with her chin. "She's a bitch and she drains her partners dry, so don't approach her." "Obviously, you've met Nash and Greta already." "Nash? Nice nickname for a sparrow." "And the platinum." "Don't," Lanka said, her voice no longer playful. "Seriously, don't get near her." "But..." "It's Livia," Narcinia said as if it explained everything. I ain't cleaning your bloody corpse, blabbermouth, so follow some social distancing guidelines, Lanka said, starting her fourth smoke of the night. Vamp'll kill you while you fuck, but you won't get that far with Livia. What, she can turn me to stone with a glance? Ryan asked. It's not Livia you should fear, Lanka replied ominously, it's her father. And she dated my brother, Narcinia told Ryan. So she's a cat person? Narcinia pinched him in the arm. That was stupid, she said with a smirk. Teenagers. Don't you want to date my sister, Ryan? We could have goat fights every weekend. I'm pretty sure she's already taken, Lanka snickered while reviewing the guests, before letting out a sigh. Apparently, she hadn't found anyone to her liking yet. But I don't like that guy. Narcinia complained, snapping the beer can open. He stares at me sometimes, it's creepy. I hope my sister gets bored of him soon. I'll settle that right now. Ryan glanced at the stoic game designer and started shouting at him. Hey, Maddie. Matthias Martel looked at him, clearly at his wit's end. Wanna grab me a drink and talk pop culture outside? You still owe me one. The game designer exchanged a few words with his girlfriend. A few seconds later, Fortuna glared at the courier while Matthias grabbed 2 glasses off the counter. Protect the goats, my green friend, Ryan told Narcinia. We may need to sacrifice them for your wish to happen. You aren't a Satanist, right? The teen asked, suddenly worried.
Nah.
He's way worse, Lanka said, while Ryan already moved towards the terrace. The big fire below's got nothing on those I started, the courier replied playfully. I was kidding. Narcinia pleaded, Shub-Niggurath letting out small cries. I was kidding. Ryan winked at her over his shoulder, before being joined by Matthias. A few genomes had taken over the infinity pool, but for now, most remained inside. The courier grabbed a drink offered to him, then sat on the ramp, an inch from falling into the void below. He looked up upon hearing noise, watching Vulcan's mech pass over the house and land in the garden outside. Good, Ryan would interrogate her about how her hunt of the metagang had gone. I thought you were unlucky in love, he asked Matthias. I am, she's a job, he replied, confirming Ryan's suspicions about his identity. One that backfired spectacularly, I should add. Her power is busted. That's pretty cold. Says the pot calling the kettle black. The programmer sipped his glass and glared at the courier. You're a colossal dick, quick save. I know, and you love me for it. Good call for Luigi though, he replied, low enough that no one else would overhear. I was going to take care of him, but you acted quicker. I'm sorry my hatred of truthsayers got in the way of your cold-hearted assassination attempt. Ryan glanced at Narcinia. She and Lanka moved the sofa aside, clearing out the living room to turn it into a dance floor. The rave party would begin soon. So, it's her? Matthias Martel didn't look at him, instead staring at the Varan sisters. For a moment, the mask slipped, and the real person beneath spoke through.
Yeah.
Shroud replied, a dangerous look in his eyes as he observed Narcinia. It's her. 36, color rave. When is the sound coming? Lanka asked Ryan for the 3rd time, an elbow on the loudspeaker. When you find me another brain, Ryan replied, tinkering with the device. A few people had already taken over the dance floor, but the house's equipment couldn't support a true rave party. Seriously, Ki-young needed to stop buying Dynami's home products. They were barely a cut above pre-war's Chinese imports. Actually, did buying the enemy's products count as collaboration? Stop distracting him, Narcinia told Lanka, defending Ryan with such zeal that he considered making her his sidekick. The green genome was busy cultivating strange, phosphorescent mushrooms on the ground. She had promised it would help with the rave, and the courier let her run wild with her imagination. Quicksave glanced at Matthias, who was talking with Fortuna and other members of the Killer Seven. Half an hour had passed since their conversation, and the house was now filled to the brim with guests. "So, you're adopted?" Ryan bluntly asked Narcinia. "Did you ever learn who your birth parents were?" "Ryan." Lanka snapped at him. "They were raiders," Narcinia replied, almost casually. "Father Torque said they were killers and rapists, and that Augustus punished them because it was divine justice." Ryan could have sworn the TV's screen threatened to crack for a brief second. He glanced up at Matthias, whose smile contrasted with the icy look in his eyes. "Sorry," Lanka said, glaring at the courier. Thankfully, the power outburst had been subtle enough for her to miss it. "Blabbermouth has no tact at all." "It's okay," Narcinia replied with a cute smile. "My real family is the one that raised me. My mom and dad are awesome, and my siblings even more so." "I was adopted too, but it sucked," Ryan said with a shrug. "Well, half of it." "Really?" Narcinia's head perked up in interest, while Lanka listened in silence. "My parents died when bandits wiped out our community to steal our supplies," Ryan said. "It had been so long ago, it had lost almost all emotional effect. I was 11, I think? Maybe 12. And I turned out great." "Ryan." Lanka's voice had lost all playfulness. "Did these bandits?" Ryan glanced at the snake tattoo on her arm, that of her former gang. "You weren't among them and they're all dead," the courier replied with a shrug. "I'm over it." Lanka fell silent with a thoughtful look on her face, while Narcinia looked between them in confusion. Thankfully, a newcomer interrupted them before the mood turned even more awkward. Ryan almost didn't recognize Vulcan at first sight, because the genius had cleaned herself up. She had traded her usual clothes for a black halter top and pants, and let her hair fall down on her shoulders. While she was no head-turning beauty, the Augusti capo looked great. He really had a thing for geniuses shorter than him. "Ceres, Sphere." Vulcan smirked upon seeing the courier. "Ryan." "Hey, my favorite arms dealer," Ryan rejoiced, raising a screwdriver. "Your arrival is just perfect." "Always," she replied, a hand on her waist. "Tell me something I don't know. Do you have anything to boost the sound?" Ryan asked. "I'm trying to jury-rig the loudspeakers, but I need more juice." "Now you're talking my language," Vulcan said, searching inside her pocket and tossing him some kind of mouse-sized battery. "It's a mini generator." "Why do you carry that in your pocket?" Lanka asked, an eyebrow raised. "'Cause my phone has less autonomy than a sloth," the genius replied with a shrug, before grabbing a beer can from Lanka's personal reserve. "It's been an exhausting day." "Did you kill the meta?" Narcinia asked before Ryan could. "Almost, but Dynamis got to them first." "Fucking kill stealers." "What? They tried to buy them off." Lanka snickered. "With bullets and lasers," Vulcan replied. "They sent 3 armored squadrons, plus heavy hitters like Devilry and that bitch Wyvern. Those vultures fell on the meta and opened fire on sight." "Oh, was there gas in their alliance?" "Well, I guess it was time to clean up loose ends," Ryan said. Adam didn't look surprised. "He sacrificed a few men, but he managed to escape on a goddamn submarine." "A submarine?" Narcinia immediately asked, unable to resist the lure of undersea adventures.
"Yeah."
"A freaking submarine with Mecran's emblem on it." The dreaded genius name instantly killed the playful mood. Lanka toyed with her smoke, a frown forming on her face. "Well, that doesn't sound good. I get the feeling the situation is more complicated than it looks." Vulcan sipped her beer while glancing at Ryan. I called the underdiver to investigate since she's a specialist for underwater hunts. The thought of calling Len had crossed Ryan's mind, but he was wary of involving her now. She was probably busy with all the orphans, no need to add more pressure on her shoulders. Anyway, thanks to Vulcan's gadget, he completed his design and amplified the sound, turning the modest loudspeaker into a weapon of mass destruction. As if to answer his success, Narcinia's mushrooms unleashed a faint colored mist onto the dance floor, instantly grabbing everyone's attention. Trading his screwdriver for his drink, Ryan cleared his throat. "Boys and girls," the courier shouted while raising his glass, his voice reverberating through the loudspeaker. "With great power comes zero responsibility." Cheers answered his declaration, while Lanka created multiple colored spheres above the dance floor, one for each elixir type. They floated near the ceiling and pulsated with energy, slowly shrinking while they provided a solid light show. "How long do they last?" Vulcan asked Lanka. More people started taking over the dance floor while the music switched to a catchy synthwave song. "Around an hour if nobody touches them," Lanka said, before turning to Narcinia. "Nice trick with the mushrooms. What's your job again?" "I work on Ischia Island," the teenager replied. "I help Father Torque open the path to heaven." "That kind of heaven?" Ryan asked, immediately interested. "Are you an angel?" Narcinia's smile faltered a bit. "Sorry Ryan, I'm not supposed to say anything about it." "I'm just saying, I've always wanted to sell drugs for a living," Ryan declared, pumping his fist. "Building a South American cartel has always been my dream. If you need a drug wizard, I know all the good recipes. Meth, cocaine, heroin, opium, doesn't matter, just give me a truck and I'll start cooking." "You know how to make drugs?" Lanka asked, finishing her 6th cancer stick. "Good to know." Well, Ryan had spent 20 years? At least 20 years trying every addictive substance on the planet except elixirs, and when he ran out, he learned how to create his own supply. His drug cartel phase had been quite enjoyable actually, even if the last overdose sucked. "I'm afraid you will have to abandon that childhood dream, Ryan." Vulcan brazenly put an arm around his shoulder. "You've got an exclusive work contract with me. Can't we settle on an open relationship?" Ryan replied while brazenly putting his hand around her waist. Lanka looked at him as if expecting the courier to lose that arm very soon. "I ain't finding anyone half as good as you are," Vulcan replied, without pushing his hand away. "So it's till death do us part. Are you talking about work or something else?" Lanka joked. "He could visit," Narcinia said, clearly eager to meet Ryan again. "Father Torque says the equipment needs an update. Especially the defenses." "Bacchus doesn't know jack shit about tech," Vulcan replied, her amusement turning into frustration. "Besides, you've got a freaking ghost guarding your precious island. Mr. Geist says he can't be everywhere at once, and that he may ascend to heaven any time." "Pretty please?" Ryan asked Vulcan, doing his best impersonation of a kitten's cute stare. "Don't start." Vulcan rolled her eyes, before glancing at the dance floor. "You know how to dance?" "If I say I'm amazing, then I'm being modest." "Let's put that boast to the test, shall we?" Both put the drinks aside and moved to the dance floor alongside other couples. It quickly became apparent that Vulcan didn't have much experience, but Ryan had mastered every dance under the sun, so he guided them through. Matthias also danced with Fortuna, and the glass manipulator seemed to enjoy it a bit more than he would like to admit. "Is there anything you aren't good at?" Vulcan asked Ryan. He could feel her sweat on his fingers, her breath accelerating. "Ice skating." Vulcan chuckled in response, and Ryan may have smiled, if not for the unpleasant sensation of someone watching him from afar. A quick glance quickly told him whom. Livia observed him from the bar, her gaze first one of surprise, then confusion. She started asking questions to Sparrow nearby, and while Ryan could read lips, the lighting didn't help him understand anything. He did capture the mysterious woman's attention though. It must have been his magnetic personality. Fuck off. Ryan and Vulcan interrupted their wild dancing when they heard Jamie's voice cut through the noise. The swordsman had grabbed a fire manipulator whom Ryan had sighted earlier during the party by the shirt, and looked ready to murder him. The guest carried a broken inhaler in his hands, full of a bluish, almost phosphorescent liquid. It seemed one idiot had ignored Jamie's rules and brought bliss to the party. And Ki-young. Chitter looked at the drug with a pale face, shaking. She seemed paralyzed and unable to say anything, a former addict faced with her personal poison. Bliss could be taken either in liquid or gas form, and it was powerful enough to affect genomes. It was also incredibly addictive, which Ryan could personally attest. He could never finish a run after trying it, and while he had only ever found one way to cure the addiction, it was horribly painful. Not to mention the hidden, long-term side effects. The idiot tried to protest, even while Jamie looked murderous. It was not a pretty sight, since the made man was a tall brawler built like a bear. While he hadn't manifested any laser weapons from his hands, the scowl of black fury on his face made it clear he was barely restraining himself. The contrast with his usual kindness made it all the more jarring. In fact, Ryan had only ever seen him this angry when Luigi had exposed his infiltration in some loops. But... fuck off. Jamie snarled before throwing the genomes backward, his tone turning venomous. Don't bother ever coming back. The guest looked around, surrounded by glares from other guests, and moved towards the door with a cowed face and his inhaler. It's okay? Jamie immediately asked his girlfriend, his frightful face softening back into a kind one. Yes, Ki-young said, although she clearly didn't mean it. It's fine. It's fine. Jamie put his hands around her waist in a protective manner and then turned to Ryan when he and Vulcan approached the couple. Sorry for the mess, Zanbato apologized. Your house, your rules, Vulcan replied, glancing at the house's entrance. I'll discipline that idiot, Zanbato. You got my word on this. Thank you. Jamie looked at his troubled girlfriend, then back at Ryan. I think we will retire early. Can you and Lanka take care of the guests in our absence? Sure, the courier said. Can I trust you not to do anything stupid? Jamie asked, an eyebrow raised. I swear I will not start any fires under this roof. That's oddly specific, he noted, but had more pressing matters on his mind. Don't burn down the house. Ryan raised a thumb up with one hand and crossed his fingers behind his back with the other. Jamie and Ki-young moved upstairs, leaving the ground and main room to the guests. I didn't know Chitter was a recovering addict, Vulcan noted, showing surprising insight. I'm glad I never took that stuff. Don't get high on your own supply, Ryan replied. Scarface? She smirked at his surprised face. I watch movies too. Maybe I'll show you a few, one day. Sparrow approached the duo before they could return to the dance floor. Quick save. The bodyguard cleared her throat. Ms. Livia wants to talk to you. About what? Vulcan asked, her tone shifting from flirtatious to serious. I don't know, Sparrow replied. But you can come if you want. Ryan and Vulcan exchanged a glance, and while the genius clearly wasn't happy about it, she didn't seem willing to deny the request either. That Livia clearly had sway in the organization, or at least her father did. Livia awaited them at the counter, playing with a cocktail. Greta and the vamp formed a security cordon around her, giving her a safe space among the crowd. her eyes remained set on Ryan with a mix of curiosity and interest. "Are you there?" Livia asked Ryan, her voice radiating quiet confidence. "Maybe, maybe not," Ryan replied. "Can we ever be sure that we truly exist? As in, are you physically there, or are you a hallucination?" "Well, true hallucinations don't ask if they're real," Ryan said. "That's how I tell them apart." Livia chuckled in response, but Vulcan's face remained an unreadable mask as she asked a question of her own. "Shouldn't you know that already, princess?" "I would, if my power worked on him," Livia replied. She sounded oddly pleased about it. "It doesn't. As far as it can tell, the man in front of me does not exist." Vulcan frowned. "You mean, you can't see him in any alternate universe?" "Huh? No, which should be impossible," Livia continued, studying Ryan with clear curiosity. "My name is Livia Augusti or Minerva. Are you a blue? Perhaps a white?" "No, I'm not a smurf. I'm closer to magenta." "A violet? Oh, then you must be Quicksave. My aunt spoke of you." "You know I'm immortal?" Ryan asked her, happy to have become famous. "I didn't tell anyone before." "I'm sure of it," she replied with a bright smile that made Ryan strangely uneasy. "Wait, Livia Augusti? As in the core family?" She was Pluto's niece, and Lanka had said he should fear her father. Ryan's heart skipped a beat. "Who's your daddy?" he asked for confirmation. The young woman's smile widened, and she glanced through the windows, and at Mount Augustus beyond it. "Shit, Augustus can reproduce. I can see and interact with alternate realities," Livia explained. "I won't give you all the boring details, but I can see the different ways a situation can play out, even a human being. But for some reason, my power simply fails to take you into account." If so, then no wonder she had looked so bored beforehand. If that mafia princess could observe multiple realities, she probably knew how the party would turn out before it even began. Until Ryan himself entered the picture. "Interesting," he said, noting that information for later. "You said you overlap with your alternate selves," Vulcan told her dance partner. "Maybe that's why. Your powers interfere with each other." Well, except he lied about that part, and Ryan couldn't tell them his own theory without revealing his bluff. "I can't suppress my curiosity," Livia admitted. "Even Greta only prevents me from seeing anything when using her power on me, otherwise I can see her just fine. This situation is truly a first for me. The orange is in the hen house." Both Vulcan and Livia frowned at Ryan. "I'm sorry," the mafia princess asked. "If you remember that sentence, then it means everything is fine," Ryan said while grabbing a drink off the counter. "I will be sure to remember it then," Livia replied with amusement. The more they talked, the more delighted she looked. "I would be interested in examining how our powers interact if you don't mind. I'm still figuring out my limits." "How about a wager then?" Livia put a hand on her cheek, considering the courier's proposal. "A wager? I thought of something to cap the party." Ryan raised an index finger, sipping the cocktail. "Something so daring, so risky, so mad, that I promise you will never have seen it in any alternate universe. Something which will piss off Wyvern something fierce." Livia raised an amused eyebrow, while Vulcan looked ready to take the bait. "I'm listening," the mafia princess said. Ryan smirked. 2 hours later, Ryan hid from lasers behind a desk on the 20th floor of Dynami's HQ. He wore a new purple suit on his person, while an armored Vulcan was engaged in a firefight with the private security. Romano. Enrique Monada pointed a gun at the courier, while furious vines moved to surround him. "Drop that cashmere suit." The things he did for his wardrobe. 37. The War of the Suit. A few minutes before the shootout, Ryan was sitting behind Vulcan inside her mech, both partners in crime observing Dynami's HQ through a computer screen. The tower looked like some game's final dungeon, with increasingly dangerous enemies guarding each floor with the boss at the very top. It almost made Ryan wish for a suicide run, but that would be for another time. His suit awaited him. "Should you be drinking while driving?" the courier asked Vulcan, who just finished a bottle of vodka. "I haven't taken enough to feel any effects," she replied, opening a hidden compartment and putting the empty bottle there. Ryan noticed a few other bottles inside, including a Bordeaux wine and a few other delicacies. Vulcan immediately rose up further in the courier's esteem for showing such exquisite tastes. "You have a minibar?" "I'm a genius," she replied with a smirk. "Maybe I will put one in your power armor when I get around to making it. I'm thinking of something sleek, optimized for close combat. I would prefer a Megazord honestly. Maybe it could have a panda-themed animal mode? From those Japanese-American shows?" She made a disdainful face. "They're campy as hell." "Hey, don't spit on my childhood," Ryan complained, before squinting. "Wait, you watch them too?" "I looked into many sci-fi TV series for inspiration," Vulcan admitted with a look of brief embarrassment, before changing the subject. "Anyway, I finished scanning the area, and we're good." "So we're going in?" Vulcan looked over her shoulder, with Ryan leaning on her back due to the cockpit's lack of space. "That may have come out a bit dirty." "I studied their defenses," Vulcan told him before focusing back on the screen. "Been itching to test my stealth system on Dynamis, but never got the occasion. I still can't believe Livia gave her blessing, especially if she doesn't know how it will end." "She gave her blessing because she doesn't know," Ryan pointed out. The Mafia princess seemed as desperate as he was for new and unexpected entertainment. "Thanks for helping. I wouldn't try that if Alphonse Monada was in town, even for your pretty face," Vulcan admitted. "That ruthless mofo is everything his brother isn't. Even without him nearby, we have minutes before they send heavy hitters after us, after which we're toast. Grab the suit and don't play around." "Not even a little?" "Don't play around, Ryan," Vulcan replied firmly, pointing at the building right next to Dynami's HQ, namely the Il Miglior Tower. "Their best can take on our best, and it's their territory. They will move to reinforce the strategic areas like the labs once the alarm is sounded, but confusion will only buy us so much time. Now hold on to me." Ryan sighed but consoled himself with the thought of finally getting a cashmere wool suit. In preparation for this fateful moment, the courier had left most of his clothes behind at Jamie's place, except for his pants, shirt, mask and hat. The only thing he carried with him was the plushie, too dangerous to be left without supervision. Vulcan put it in a compartment inside the mech, sealing its evil away. Vulcan had her mech fly off its current spot and above New Rome, shrouding its metal hide with some kind of camouflage. It might trick Dynami's radars and drone defenses, at least until impact. Vulcan's mech quickly accelerated, the G-force increasing until Ryan had no choice but to hold on to the pilot to avoid being thrown backward. He could see Dynami's building get closer and closer on the computer screen, wing-shaped drones flying around the perimeter. The combination of speed, low altitude, and stealth hid the power armor from their gaze. And then, the mech hit the building like a missile, shattering the 20th floor's windows and most of its ceiling. Vulcan powered through furniture, assembly lines, and wardrobes before finally stopping. "Go, go, go!" Vulcan shouted at Ryan while the cockpit opened, the courier immediately emerging from the mech. Dynami's wool factory was a sanitized floor lacking anything resembling warmth or color, with mechanical arms replacing humans as part of the assembly line. Only a few desks oversaw the production lines, and since they each housed a computer, they probably belonged to engineers. 2 elevators and stairways linked the floor to the rest of the building south of the duo's current position. Alarms started resonating across the floor, metal panels closing the windows outside and security cameras immediately focusing on the intruders. Ryan didn't pay it any attention. A Gregorian song in his head drowned all noise outside, his attention entirely focused on something straight out of his wildest dream. The freshly made cashmere wool suits were gathered in a wardrobe near his position, each one a different color. Among them was a purple-dyed one, with pants included. The perfect suit had been waiting for him all along. No man would have been insensible to such a sight, and Ryan was no exception. He carefully touched this luxury cloth with his bare hands, feeling the texture, the warmth, the weight of the €1,000 spent on making this vision of heaven. He took this snazzy suit away from the wardrobe, basking in its glory. Suddenly, Ryan decided that existence wasn't meaningless. All the conflicts in mankind's history had been worth it, for they led to the creation of this suit. "Ryan!" Vulcan shouted at him from inside her mech, growing tense and impatient. The machine had to lower itself not to hit the ceiling. "What the fuck are you waiting for?" "I'm sorry," Ryan had to suppress tears of joy. This is the meaning of life." Unfortunately, newcomers decided to interrupt his divine revelation. A 6-man squadron in white power armor stepped out of the 2 elevators, escorting Blackthorn. The Dynamis executive finished adjusting his suit as if preparing for a meeting rather than a fight. Mr. Romano, Mississippi Sharif, Enrique Manada said, always dryly polite. "If you wish to make a late-night appointment, we had a receptionist downstairs." His soldiers pointed their weapons, powerful laser rifles, at the 2 Augusti genomes. Vulcan raised her own cannon arm at them, both groups facing each other in a tense standoff. "I don't take appointments," the genius declared, trying to sound badass, "I force them." Ryan groaned at her lack of wit. She needed some coaching on that front. "Your attack is bound to fail," Enrique said with icy confidence. "The labs are secure, Don Hector is in another location, and our heroes will be there any minute. I don't understand what you're trying to do here, but this was suicide to even try." "Oh, a minute is fine," Ryan replied, walking towards Vulcan's mech. "We just finished our shopping and we will be on our way." "You won't get—" Blackthorn suddenly stopped, his composure disturbed by something for the first time in the conversation. "Wait, what do you mean by shopping? I don't understand." Ryan pointed a thumb at his shirt. "Good." Ryan stopped time, and when it resumed, he had stripped down to his underwear. He kept only his mask, hat and boxers on, the rest of his clothes on the floor. 6 laser rifles were instantly pointed at him, 5 at his head, and 1 at his crotch, by far his most powerful weapon. "Behind me, sir, he's going to flash you," a soldier said, moving in front of a speechless Enrique Manada. Ryan ignored the jab, even as the entire squadron seemed ready to blast him to death at a moment's notice. He slowly put on the suit, pants last, ignoring the pervading tension in the room. No one dared interrupt him, his sheer moxie and the absurdity of the situation commanding everyone's full attention. "Better." Once he had put on the suit, Ryan started closing its buttons. Slowly. Methodically. Lovingly. Finally, once he had finished dressing up, Ryan put his hands on his waist. The suit's colors mixed perfectly with his mask and hat, making him look fabulous. The way any genome's costume should. Perfect. For a moment, nobody dared utter a word. Enrique Manada looked at the courier, left speechless by the time manipulator's overwhelming glamour. Il Miglior's manager glanced at the suit, then at Vulcan, and finally at his men. They rolled their shoulders in confusion, so he looked back at Quick Save. You broke into our HQ, threatened to start a war, for a suit, Enrique seemed unable to make a full sentence, interrupting himself whenever he said more than 5 words. He kept raising and lowering his hand as if trying to point out something, but unable to finish his action. Not for the elixirs, or Don Hector, but for a suit. The brand manager turned as stiff and lifeless as a Dynamis ad. "Sir?" One of the armored soldiers turned to Enrique, keeping his rifle pointed at Quicksave's crotch. "Sir, what do we do?" "Sir? You can't possibly, this has to be a diversion, can't possibly be that stupid." "I think you made his brain bug the hell out, Quicksave," Vulcan mused out loud, her cannon arm still pointed at Dynamis' squadron. Enrique shook his head, still unable to regain his composure. "I'm trying to process the sheer stupidity involved." "Oh," Ryan said, "and here I thought you were the smart one." The taunt snapped Blackthorn into action. The rose on his business suit grew to the size of a small cannon and fired a volley of sharp thorns at Quicksave, who dodged with a combination of time stop and hiding behind the closest desk. Vulcan immediately opened fire back with her weaponry, only for an armored soldier to shield Enrique with his body. The power armor resisted an artillery shell, although it made the bodyguard stumble. The rest of the squadron retaliated with lasers, targeting Vulcan first. "Shoot them," Enrique ordered while grabbing a Beretta hidden inside his suit, a hint of anger breaking through his composure. His rose fell off his costume and started growing to colossal size, turning into an abomination of thorny vines. Ryan peeked over the desk only to quickly hide back behind it, a laser barely missing his head and incinerating his beloved hat instead. The situation had devolved into an open shootout, lasers and artillery shells flying in all directions. The ceiling started crumbling above them, chairs and office supplies falling through growing holes. "Romano!" Enrique Manada pointed his gun at the courier, while furious vines moved to surround him. "Drop that cashmere suit!" "Stay back!" Ryan shouted from his hiding spot, noticing a few pencils and a suit sketch on the desk. "I've got a bottle of Roundup, and I'm not afraid to use it." "You people have gone too far this time," Enrique snarled, his pride wounded. "You think this is a game? Are you high?" "Naturally so." Ryan stopped time as vines lunged at him from all directions, leaping over the desk and grabbing the pencils while at it. When time resumed, Blackthorn's mutant rose crushed the spot where the courier used to hide. Enrique reacted by pointing his gun at the time traveler's chest. Ryan threw the pencils at the manager's hand with near superhuman accuracy, forcing him to drop his weapon. However, before the courier could reach Blackthorn, rope-sized roots broke through the ceiling and attempted to grab him by the neck like a noose. Ouch! So Il Miglior's manager could not only control plants in a large radius but boost their growth too. "I guess you should have called yourself Greenhand," Ryan mocked Enrique but was forced to run away to avoid the deadly plants. The courier rushed at Vulcan's mech, managing to grab his old clothes on the ground while a laser barely missed his shoulder. Vulcan ordered, the cockpit opening. Ryan froze time again, climbed on the mech's back, and then slipped inside. Without a pause, Vulcan closed the cockpit and activated the propellers. The mech flew straight through the metal panels covering the windows, shrugging off lasers and thick vines. The vegetal abominations couldn't catch up with the mech once it escaped the building, Enrique glaring at it through the window's hole. Flying Dynamis drones immediately gave chase and fired at Vulcan, who responded by accelerating. Ryan had to grab the genius by the waist to avoid being thrown back by the sheer G-force involved, as the mech flew away towards the Mediterranean Sea. Vulcan kept increasing the speed and lowered her altitude until her mech all but touched the waters, distancing the drones. After a 5 minutes chase, the mech lost its pursuers and decelerated. Once safe, Vulcan and Ryan looked at each other while still high on adrenaline, then erupted into shouts and victory cries. "That was amazing!" Vulcan laughed, beaming with joy.
"Yeah,
right." It's comfy and classy. Ryan examined his new suit. As if it were made for me. I can't wait to see the news tomorrow morning and the Dynami's press release. Vulcan grinned ears to ears. It will have been worth it just to see that Manada-ass face while trying to explain this. He can't even cover it up. So we win the bet, Chief? Ryan asked mirthfully. Oh yes, we do. Vulcan replied with a chuckle. Handily. I hope there's a prize, Ryan deadpanned, seeing a notification on the screen. Looks like we're getting a call. It's the defunct channel from my old Dynami's days, Vulcan said, picking up the call. Sharif, do you even understand what you have done? Enrique spoke on the other side of the radio. You vandalized our HQ to steal a cashmere suit? You think you are above consequences? You should thank us for testing your defenses, Vulcan replied with a grin. Dynamis won't take this lying down, Enrique replied, his tone laced with menace. This time, you've pissed into a volcano. Vulcan responded by shutting off the channel. So what next, Chief? Ryan asked. I mean, you're the designated driver there. Jasmine. You can call me Jasmine when there's no one around. She looked through the screens, checking if anyone followed them so far, but her stealth device worked perfectly. We're going home. Jamie's house is the other way. Jasmine looked over her shoulder, looking at him as if he were the biggest idiot she had ever met. We're going to my home. Oh. Ryan took in her proposal, and while he was short on words for a moment, something quickly came to mind. Is wyvern the safe word? Vulcan's hand lunged for Ryan's hair, grabbed it, and forced his head to move within an inch of her own. Yes, it is, smartass, the genius said, showing the courier her bare teeth, but spoiler warning. Vulcan whispered into his ear. I won't be listening. 38, The Olympians. It ended as well as expected. With Ryan naked and shackled to a bed, a maniacal Vulcan in a black nightgown on one side, and the plushie on another. It was all a trap, the courier accused the mad genius, straining against the shackles. You only cared about the plushie. Very good, Ryan, Jasmine said, playing with her knife. The inactive plushie looked on while sitting on a chair. Now, tell me everything you know about it. I would, but I look down on short people. If you won't talk, Jasmine put the knife against his chin, and her free hand on his chest, I will make you squeal. Don't look, Ryan told the inactive plushie, trying to avert its gaze. Please don't look. A phone called in the other room, interrupting the roleplay. Jasmine let out a heavy sigh. Gimme a sec, she said, stepping over an empty condom box before searching for her cell phone among their clothes on the ground. Ryan whistled while she moved out of the bedroom to answer the call. As it turned out, Vulcan didn't live in a luxurious villa, but inside her own foundry. She had repurposed the upper echelons of the area into a spacious, soundproof apartment in an elegant steampunk style. Brass pipes and tin gears formed the main decoration, although Vulcan had also embedded a plasma TV in the bedroom's wall facing the bed. It was rather cozy, and she even included a litter for Eugene Henry, although Vulcan clearly didn't clean up the place often. Jasmine eventually returned, rolling her eyes. Was it Mr. Monsanto again? Ryan asked. Neptune. He's pissed about last night and wants to call a meeting because he's a pussy. She let her nightgown fall on the ground, raised the bedsheet, and slipped below. Her naked skin brushed against the courier's own, though she didn't undo his shackles. Ryan. Yes? Don't ever call me short again. Come on, Jasmine, be the bigger person. Her knife hit the wall behind the bed, a few inches away from the courier's face. Ryan didn't even blink. By now, he had learned that her bark was worse than her bite. though bite him she did. You're lucky to be good in the sack, so you get to live another day, Vulcan said, resting her head against his shoulder. How many women have you had? I lost count, he replied. Practice made perfect. I figured as much. I didn't know you could do that with a tongue. Jasmine glanced at the rabbit watching them. Actually, what is that plushie? Some pieces just don't make sense, and I don't know what to make of the energy readings. I tried to use it as a probe to explore a higher dimension, Ryan admitted. And? Jasmine asked, not even questioning the sanity of it. It worked? Not really. All it did was allow something from the other side to hitch a free ride to our dimension. Now it won't leave. Wait, you're saying that your rabbit is haunted? Ryan nodded, and much to his horror, it made Jasmine even more curious. That dimension, can you describe it? It's an area beyond space and time, but I haven't been able to observe it much. He frowned. Why? You know that red genomes can manipulate energy? From lightning to wavelengths? Ryan nodded. Well, red genomes, real red genomes, actually emit an energy field around them. Like radiation. This ambient energy, this red flux, can be captured, stockpiled, and then refined to make batteries. That's how Dynamis makes laser weapons. And you think this energy comes from another dimension? Ryan asked, suddenly very curious. I think so, and Dynamis does too, she replied with a nod. The Firebrand knockoff elixir alters genes so a genome could perform pyrokinesis, but doesn't create a link to the red dimension. So the body only uses the energy available, that of the human body. That's how your fireman armor enhances their pyrokinesis, Ryan guessed. You take the batteries meant for laser weapons, and you transfer this red flux energy to the genome's body. They become just as powerful as the original pyrokinetic genome the knockoffs are based on, at least as long as the battery juice keeps flowing, Jasmine said with pride. Dynamis has been wasting fortunes in an attempt to create a bridge towards that hypothetical red dimension, though they haven't managed to do so yet. That flux, do you think genomes with other colors produce variants? I suppose, but I haven't been able to observe them. Red is energy, so it's easy to measure it, and since almost all red genomes have offensive applications, my power has an easy time with them. But how do you measure life, like with green genomes? She gave him a knowing smile. Though, if you told me the truth about your power, we could work on it together. Ryan let out a shocked gasp. You know about my true power? Look, that bullshit you told Pluto? About how your power really works. She looked into his eyes. You were just pulling our legs. I thought we did that this morning. She chuckled. Why didn't you call my bluff? Because I'm curious, Jasmine replied, stroking his cheek. You're smart, funny, and the perfect gentleman, yet I can tell you've got your own agenda. I'm just trying to help a friend in need, and find happiness. I don't think that's all there is, Jasmine said. You joined this organization as a stepping stone for something else. It's fine, I'm not particularly loyal to Augustus either. But I'm pretty sure your power is something world-changing. I don't see why you would be afraid to reveal its true extent to Pluto otherwise. Ryan shrugged it off. I think it's a bit too early to talk about that. Vulcan sat on his chest, one leg on each side. Then what will we be, Ryan? I dunno, a summer fling? Ryan needed to blow off steam after his last encounters with Len and the Meta Gang, in more ways than one. I don't want to get too attached, and you're probably going to forget me soon anyway. You aren't going to forget me, Ryan. I can promise you that. Vulcan stroked the courier's cheek. If only she knew. I'm fine with a summer fling, but as I told you before, it's an exclusive contract. Cheat on me and I'll fucking kill you. If you can do the fucking before the kill, I would appreciate it. She lightly slapped him in response. Hey! You've got an attitude problem, but I'll tame you, Ryan. I'll tame you straight. She put both her hands on his ears and ferociously kissed him on the lips, like a lioness marking her territory. You know how to cook? Yep. Good, because I don't. We've got enough time for one more round and breakfast before the meeting. It's Jamie who's going to be unhappy, Ryan pointed out. I was supposed to help them clean up the house in the morning. Well, I'm higher in the hierarchy, so that's an order. Entertain me, minion. Ryan stopped time in response. When it resumed, Jasmine was the one shackled to the bed, the two having switched positions. Fuck, she said. You can actually stop time. You are going to tell me everything about Iskia Island, Miss Sharif, Ryan said, his body towering above her. We have ways of slipping past your defenses. Narcinia is 14, Jasmine smirked at him. She's too old for you. In this case, I will have to pump you for information. Vulcan tried to keep a straight face, but ended up bursting out laughing. She was kinda cute that way. After dressing up and eating a delicious breakfast, Vulcan carried the duo all the way to Mount Augustus with her mech. Obviously, Ryan had put on the cashmere suit, delighting in its glamour and softness. Augustus Estate had looked enormous from afar, but it was even more impressive from above. Ryan estimated it to be around 50 hectares. Located atop a heavily defended hill, the complex included a vast amount of monuments, the most impressive being a copy of the Parthenon to the east. An enormous, multi-floor Roman-themed villa covered roughly a third of the area, a marble palace worthy of a Roman emperor. Most of the land, however, had been repurposed into a vast park, including Roman-themed sculptures, flower gardens, Versailles-styled fountains, and even a freaking zoo. They have giraffes, Ryan said in ecstasy. The sheer luxury of the place awed even the jaded time traveler. Vulcan ended up landing near a swimming pool close to the villa, though a private sea might have been a better term. The enormous body of water was separated into smaller basins, some with fish, some without. A group awaited them on a marble terrace, relaxing under the sun. Livia was among them, sunbathing in a one-piece swimsuit next to Narcinia. Augustus' daughter immediately raised her eyes at Ryan and Vulcan when they emerged from the mech, welcoming them with a warm smile. Pluto was reading a novel on a folding beach chair near her niece, keeping a mummified head on a small table nearby. She looked oddly peaceful for a mass murderer, though the head's eyes moving on their own made the sight look quite macabre. Finally, a group of older people discussed around a table near the villa, drinks in hands. One was a priest in his 50s, with a receding gray hairline and a gaunt face. He was so lanky Ryan could see the bones below the skin, but his black eyes oozed a frightening, almost maddened intensity. His every movement was carefully calculated, and he drank water rather than cocktails. The priest, whom Ryan suspected to be Bacchus, was talking with a man entirely covered in thick armor. His equipment was heavily inspired by a Roman centurion's dress, though it covered every part of the body and included a crimson cloak. The helmet included a metal face mask, and the time traveler couldn't see the eyes beneath. The only woman of the group was a blonde woman in her 40s, straight out of a Playboy magazine. She kept her hair in a bun and wore an ancient Rome-style dress adorned with gemstones. Though he could see only the lower part of her face and sapphire eyes due to a gold-plated masquerade mask, Ryan noted a family resemblance with Fortuna in that woman's jawline. She was probably the lucky girl's mother, keeping her arm around the red centurion's. The last man around the table was clearly the oldest, somewhere in his 60s. He had dyed his hair and thick long beard blue, which complemented his eyes. He wore no mask except a golden diadem and dressed in an elegant navy blue business suit including seashells as part of the design. The old man instantly glared at Ryan and Vulcan upon seeing them, leaving the table with a dark look on his face. Much like Pluto and Minerva, the family resemblance was unmistakable. "That's Neptune," Jasmine pointed out the obvious. "I could tell," Ryan replied, waves starting to form out of nowhere in the swimming pool. Clearly, he was jealous of the courier's better suit. "Can he drain the water within us with a thought?" "Thankfully not." His girlfriend smirked. "He's an orange, so organic matter interferes with his power. Besides, he is a macro-hydrokinetic. The bigger the water volume, the greater his control. The priest is Bacchus, the couple is Mars and Venus, and the mummified head is Mercury. I imagined him taller." "Mercury is a paranoid loon who doesn't leave his home," Vulcan snickered. "He can reanimate corpses and command them, so he sends them on missions." "Ryan, Vulcan." Narcinia waved a hand at the couple upon noticing them. "Welcome to Mount Augustus," Livia said, though she didn't rise up from her long chair. "A true queen. We were just discussing yesterday's events. I admit you were right, I couldn't anticipate anything like it." "Did we win a prize?" Ryan asked. "Personally, I would settle for a statue in my honor." "Marble or gold?" Livia replied with a wink, examining his suit. "I love it. It's classy."
Oh.
"I could add a few flowers if you want," Narcinia told Ryan.
Nah.
"I used all my weed killer on Blackthorn," Ryan said, Jasmine smirking. The banter was interrupted by a very furious Neptune. "You little, irresponsible brats," he snarled, pointing a finger at Jasmine and Ryan. "I should drown the both of you right now." "Can you do it in Coca-Cola?" Ryan asked innocently. Much to his surprise, Vulcan didn't smash his foot to silence him, and instead bantered back. "It's like being drowned in acid," Jasmine told him. "Diabetes acid." "Yes, so my death will be quicker." "Do you have any idea what you did?" Neptune thundered. "Vulcan, you and your soldier could have sparked an all-out war." "Uncle, they did it on my orders," Livia spoke up calmly. "I will take full responsibility for this." "It was still stupid," Neptune snarled. "Blackthorn labeled your prank as a terrorist attack, promising retaliation." "Enrique must have suppressed the part where I undressed and put on the suit," Ryan said. Pluto, who had listened to the conversation, clearly struggled to contain her laughter, much to Ryan's shock. Neptune glared at her. "Am I the only one here having a problem with this fiasco?" "We were young too, Silvio," Pluto replied, more amused than anything. "What's wrong with letting them indulge a little?" "I strongly suspect Hector Monada to have hired the Meta gang to harass us," Livia said, all business. This was a calculated attempt to put them back in their place. "By stealing a suit?" her uncle asked with heavy sarcasm, clearly not believing his niece. "Did you summon us to bitch about it?" Jasmine asked with a shrug. "'Cause we got important work to do. There is also the matter of Mercury's replacement," Livia explained. "As we discussed in our previous meeting, I stand by my decision to retire," the mummified head spoke with an old, weary voice, startling Ryan. "I've grown too old for this. Marco, last time I met you in the flesh you were lively for someone past pushing 90. Ryan turned towards the speaker, Mars. The Roman cosplayer had risen from his table to meet the group, his wife holding his arm. Bacchus followed his hands behind his back. "You're still one of our best." "I personally know someone older than you with a youthful attitude," Pluto said while giving Ryan a knowing smile. "I've lived through 3 generations of the Camorra, children, yours included," the talking head said. "I'm weary, I've earned more money than I could ever use, and I have no family left. I believe it's time I buy a private island and spend the rest of my days drinking margaritas on the beach." This will wait until after their punishment, Neptune said, still glaring at Vulcan and Quick Save. For what? Giving Dynamis their due. Venus spoke up, greeting Ryan and Jasmine with a nod. Did you see Felix during your attack, Vulcan? Vulcan shook her head. No, only Blackthorn. They didn't react fast enough to send heroes after us. A shame, the Centurion greeted Ryan before shaking his hand. Greetings, I'm Mars, though you can call me Luca. I appreciate you looking for my daughter at that party. We had goat fights, Narcinia said innocently. Oh, by the way, what happened to Shub-Niggurath? Ryan asked with concern. Is she all right? A guy and his girlfriend took her home, Narcinia said. They said they would put her to good use, but when I asked which one, they just put a hand on my head and smiled. Mars burst out laughing, while Venus glared at her husband. I've got enough with a cat, Jasmine whispered into Ryan's ear. I'm not taking a goat. Well, I admit I'm torn, Ryan whispered back, shuddering. I don't know where she has loitered. Back to the important subject, Neptune cut through the chit-chat. Tensions with Dynamis are at an all-time high and they can't tolerate a direct attack on their HQ. They will strike back, if only to keep face. War now would be a tragedy, Bacchus said, his voice soft and soothing like honey. He had remained silent for a while, listening to everyone. Thanks to Ceres, we are on the verge of achieving heaven. A conflict with Dynamis will interfere with that. You and your heaven, Venus rolled her eyes. He is right though, war is bad for business, Mercury said. It's not always about the money, old man, Pluto replied icily. Sometimes, it's about respect. Do you want Alphonse Monada back in town? Neptune sneered at his sister. Because they will recall that madman if we push them too far, and then there will be blood in the streets. Ryan didn't say anything while they argued, trying to assess how every member of the Augusti High Command fit in. They were clearly divided into a moderate, business-minded faction and more brutal warmongers. Narcinia said nothing, too young to assert herself, but her presence at this gathering implied that she served a key role in the organization. And Livia oversaw the group discussion like a lioness observing her pack. Though in the end, Ryan's main quest was to destroy the lab and settle his deal with Shroud. So, how did a priest end up making drugs? He asked Bacchus. I don't think that's very Catholic. God works in mysterious ways, the priest replied calmly. All sins are forgiven, if done to reach heaven. I don't think that's how religion works, Father. Ryan. Narcinia nagged him, before turning to the priest. He doesn't know what he says, Father Torque. It is fine, the priest replied, his eyes peering into Ryan's own with disturbing intensity. The courier suddenly realized this man hadn't blinked once in the entire conversation. You may not believe in God, but I assure you, it does exist. I've seen it with my own eyes, in all of its divine glory. It? Ryan asked with a frown, while Jasmine rolled her eyes. Don't get him started with this, Venus interrupted them. As for the Monada, we should have wiped them out years ago. That clan has been nothing but a thorn in our collective foot. Honey, Mars tried to calm his wife. They took our son, she complained. In the old days, we would have slaughtered them for less. Felix is just having a rebellious phase. Ironically, for a god of war, Mars seemed rather laid back. He is a naive boy transitioning into a mature man. He will come back into the fold, eventually. Livia's eyes turned to cold steel upon hearing this. She grabbed a towel to cover her shoulders and rose from her long chair. He won't, and there will be no punishment for yesterday night. Livia, Neptune began. That is for Father to decide, she interrupted her uncle, and you know he will see things my way. Neptune flinched. You called him? Livia nodded slowly, while the air grew oppressive. An electrical tension spread through the atmosphere, like during a thunderstorm's approach. Everyone tensed up except for Livia herself. The villa's doors slowly opened, everyone staring at them in utter silence. Even Ryan, who was usually unflappable, remained still. A towering, shining figure stepped through the threshold. A faint halo of crimson electricity surrounded his body, making it difficult for people to look directly at him. When he focused though, Ryan began to distinguish the shape of an aging man wearing a toga beneath the electrical shroud. But when the courier looked into this man's cold gaze, he realized that age hadn't dimmed his brutality one bit. "My daughter," Augustus said, his voice echoing with the sound of booming thunder. "Why have you called me?"